video has been very kindly sponsored today by Cove Audio, and let me tell you, with their speakers being as good as this, you'll be able to hear crisp and bassy tunes all the way to the other end of a cove. I'm so sorry, that was a terrible pun. But in all seriousness, I was sent this portable Cove commuter speaker a few months back, and I've been in love with it since the day that I opened it. And as the name suggests, it's perfect for those who commute a lot and do a lot of travelling. Which I do, isn't that lucky? It's got a fantastic design, mixing digital touch and swipe systems with analog dials for volume. It's got a 3.5mm aux cable output, as well as Bluetooth for phones, tablets and computers. And my favourite thing about it? The subwoofer. I love me a bit of bass. Here is the same scary clown waltz from earlier, but with extra bass. Even better, you could actually take this Cove speaker to a real cove, because not only does it last 8 hours on a single charge, but it's also water resistant, so a few splashes from the ocean isn't going to bother it too much. I would demonstrate this, but I live in the UK, and if you've seen our beaches, you know they look like waste disposals. I suppose I could show you me driving along with it, since it does fit nicely in a cup holder, and even better, you won't get pulled over for drinking and driving, because it isn't a drink. If you want to check out this great bit of kit right now, then head to the description below to coveaudio.com/Caddy65. It's like Caddicarus, but without the carus. And by using the discount code Caddy65, you'll be able to get yourself 65% off of this thing. That is an absolute steal as far as I'm concerned. Be warned though, it does have a built-in mic, which is cool and all, but don't start taking private calls with it, alright?
Jim, Mum sent your baby blanket in the post. Did you receive it okay?
Shut up, sis! Over the years, since the 1930s, there have been many superheroes dedicating their lives to fighting crime and using their unique otherworldly gifts and knowledge for the greater good. Batman, Iron Man, Superman. And over those years, they haven't just blown people's minds, but evolved with the times, starting off in print, followed by making their way to moving pictures, and finally ending up in interactive entertainment, video games. Because who doesn't want to be these guys and control what they do to save the world? I mean, just take those few examples I mentioned earlier. Batman's been in games, so has Iron Man, Superman, and of course, who can forget Spider-Man? But there's one superhero. But there's one superhero. Stop it. But there's one super. Okay, cut it out, Spider-Man. We get it. You've been in lots of games. We're very, very proud of you. Now, please get out.
Fine, I will.
But there's one superhero that was late to the party, one that the world desperately needed, but wasn't discovered, unfortunately, until the 1990s.
And it was in this decade that a young man went forth on a pilgrimage to commune with spirits beyond thine human comprehension, to worship and speaketh with the holiest and most legendary of all historical figures, and seeketh guidance to find this superhero that should have arrived decades prior, and so armed with his trusty companion, the Holy Bible. This young man hath felt the grace of God touch his soul as he opened the scripture to find his answers, which was when he saw staring unto him was his true God, Pepsiman! Your God is alive!
Yeah, Pepsi got a superhero. Can you believe that? Look at him. He looks like a kiwi fruit with arms and legs that had its hair shaved off. This is what happens when Slender Man visits the gym. What's with these rippling biceps and broad, angular pecs? And why do I suddenly have feelings for a man made out of a logo? I mean, what's next? Waking up after a drunk night out next to this guy?
Hey, Michelin Man, I think my pants are stuck in your rolls.
As for his superpowers, though, well, he can throw cans of Pepsi. He has radioactive Pepsi piss? Look, I don't know what the point of him is exactly, but I can at least assume that compared to Coca Cola, Pepsi Man's butt sweat has 120 calories less per litre. The best thing about him, though? He got a video game. I mean, sure, it was only released in Japan because Pepsi Man was the Japanese exclusive Pepsi mascot, but who cares? It's 2019 and I finally get to play a game released on my childhood console in 1999 with this thing as its star. Let's be real, why was it released so late? For 1999, I think it was about time Pepsi got a video game because let's be honest, as we all know,
Pepsi is better than Coke!
The intro to the game boots up and we see a strange, definitely not Japanese individual going to buy himself a Pepsi from a vending machine, until he gets more than he bargained for. Oh, what was that? Oh, I know that music. Where is he? Where is he? Oh god, I really don't like this. Is he gonna jump out at us or something? No, he isn't.
Oh lord, he's coming for us! Christ, what is with Pepsi Man dashing for the camera surrounded by this black void? This is worse than Nightmare Creatures and the game hasn't even started yet. Now this is what you call a menu. I mean, what? This game came out in 1999 and they couldn't think of anything more interesting? Just a silent list of options with a poorly rendered can of Pepsi spinning in the back? I know it's PS1, so I can't be that judgmental, but I've seen better graphical effects on some of the worst games ever made on the system, like Rascal. And I mean, there's nothing else on the screen. It's not like the PS1 is working overtime. It could look a little bit better. After hitting the game start command, we then cut back to this guy we saw in the first FMV sequence who nearly ingested Pepsi Man right into his gullet. He's a recurring character, believe it or not. And I really think he needs some help.
Hey, let's start the game!
You know, I'm so glad that a big, random, sweaty American guy in my Japanese exclusive PS1 game about a faceless, muscly tin man representing Pepsi told me that the game could start. Why are we waiting on his permission?
Okay, so we're about to find out our first mission of the game. Here we go.
I got a call that a vending machine ahead ran out of Pepsi when I got a flat tire. There are a bunch of people gathered in front of the vending machine, and the word is that they're just about to riot.
Yes, you heard him correctly. We have to deliver Pepsi to the town before they riot and probably die of Pepsi thirst because a vending machine service truck tire is flat. It's not exactly saving the world, I know, but it's a good start. I mean, what's the point of living if you can't drink Pepsi? And listen to the desperation in his voice. This guy is worried sick.
They're just about to riot.
I haven't heard that much squeaking in someone's throat since Scooby-Doo got snipped. We nod our head in agreement and immediately the game starts. Whoa, what? Whoa, hang on, give me a second. Hey, stop! Pepsi Man, slow down! Why can't you stop running? You're gonna run into—
Time out. Let's calm down for a second. I have a handful of questions about this. And a Pepsi in the other hand.
So let me get this straight. If Pepsi vending machines are drying out and nobody is able to buy some without the threat of a riot, why don't they just take the free cans of Pepsi lying in the middle of the street? They're everywhere. Actually, how is there a Pepsi shortage in the first place when there are giant trucks everywhere carrying literally nothing but Pepsi? And even without that, how could they be so bad at keeping stock up when there's an outright spam amount of Pepsi advertising in pavement signs all over the place and walls made out of Pepsi? In fact, when it comes to the age-old debate of Pepsi versus Coca Cola, I'm not even sure Pepsi themselves prefer Pepsi because every single citizen and labor worker of this fine city is going out of their way to try and stop you. They don't want Pepsi Man, go home! Even better than all of this is that when he gets to the first empty vending machine, not only was I convinced from his standing position that he was going to wee Pepsi into it, but then the cheeky bastard decides to take a goddamn can from the vending machine he's supposed to be filling up. Aren't you made of Pepsi? Why do you get to drink the last ones available? And furthermore, why isn't Pepsi Man actually helping anyone? All he seems to do is ransack and pillage everybody's houses and steal their council's belongings, all so that he can just stand there looking proud of himself. And then, in the cruelest twist of fate, Pepsi Man's own company hate him enough that they deliberately run him over. Yes, this was not an accident because the driver had miles to slow down, causing him to fly into a giant Pepsi billboard, causing the giant can of Pepsi from the billboard to break free, destroy everyone and their mother's property, all while Pepsi Man does nothing except run away from the danger. This is not how you sell your products, Pepsi. You make Pepsi look like the devil's saliva. Why don't you just use your muscles, for God's sake? Stop that careening giant corporate symbol that you desperately want to sell people and sweep this disaster under the rug. Or, you know, just don't. You can always run away like a little bitch and let the city get wrecked.
That was only the first stage. That was the heftiest information dump I've ever had in a video game. And I've only been playing for 7 minutes. I need a Pepsi. Let's calm down and take a step back, okay? Pepsi and hamburgers. Delicious and healthful. What the fuck?
Okay, so right, Pepsi Man on PS1 is a game where no matter how much you try, you can't stop moving. And that's because it's a runner game. I'm sure you've all played something like this before on your phones, Sonic Dash, Temple Run, that kind of thing. This is essentially those games before they existed. All you do is let Pepsi Man run automatically away from the screen while you have to guide him around everything by jumping, sliding, speeding up, which allows you to do longer jumps, and slowing down. That's all you do in the game. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, Temple Run is one of my favorite iOS games of all time. Simplicity can be all you need as long as it's designed well. All the while, you're avoiding all sorts of various hazards like pits, other people, the worst furniture moving company in the world, and even water itself.
Water? Who needs that? I've got Pepsi. My blood is made of diabetes.
I mean, what you see is what you get here. You anticipate the hazard, then slow down, speed up, jump or slide accordingly. Don't get hit too many times because you only have a few hits in you before losing a life, and try not to take too long, otherwise you run out of time before reaching the end of the stage. This is the whole game, start to end. Not bad, once again, but get used to it because that's all you're going to be doing. And you know, I'm so sorry, I'm still wound up on the design of this thing. Are you seriously telling me you can imagine this thing with no face galloping towards you to save the day?
I think someone's watching me.
I'll save you!
Oh, like it or lump it, I guess he is our saviour after all, so how else does he save the day other than by refilling Pepsi vending machines? Well, he ends up stopping a riot with Pepsi, that's one thing, which they apparently seem to be still doing to this day. He fixes an entire computer infrastructure with Pepsi, which is funny because usually this happens. And in another stage, he hears that some poor defenseless people have escaped an office building fire and are stuck on top of the roof until the rescue services can get there. They're exhausted, dehydrated, scared for their lives, and so instead of doing anything useful, the emergency response team sends in a faceless man in a skin-tight morph suit to sprint towards them and give them Pepsi, which, taking a step back, took me much longer to do than it would have taken for any ambulance helicopter to get there. It gets worse than that too. How about this bit when you have an even worse situation? A plane crash in a desert, surviving passengers even more tired, more afraid for their lives, even more dehydrated in the scorching heat and lost in the middle of a vast endless sea of sand. But the response team doesn't bother sending water to them so that they can, you know, stay alive, and instead ask Pepsi Man to charge full speed towards them with lots of Pepsi, which I'm pretty sure will dehydrate them even more and most likely forever associate Pepsi with the premature deaths of plane crash survivors. This whole game is the worst marketing strategy I've ever seen. Towards the end of the game, look at the utter chaos that ensues over this bloody fizzy beverage. People are losing their lives and their homes right now, all because of Pepsi and how badly they've been distributing it to their customers. Why the hell am I rescuing you if you keep throwing minecarts and boulders at me? Do you want me to save you or not? Is this whole game trying to paint Pepsi as something so addictive that a city built around it will drive the populace into a crack-like trance and cause pandemonium if they don't get their fix? Or is this game a metaphor to the fact that no matter what you throw at it and whatever you do to try and stop it, Pepsi will always find you in the end?
You can never escape Pepsi.
No. It's just crap.
These chasing parts when you're dashing towards the screen can seriously suck on my toes. They appear at the end of every single stage, and I'm not kidding, are practically impossible without memorizing exactly what will happen. The camera is way too close to give you absolutely no indication on what's ahead or time to react. The obstacles and trip-ups are spat all over the road and come at you way too fast, and you only have 3 hits. 3 mistakes to make before you die and need to start over. Oh, come on, I was right there! These parts require such a degree of surgical precision to get right that I'm convinced it'll be easier to study actual surgery. In fact, why am I doing this? What's the point of wasting my life playing this? I could be learning to become a surgeon. I could be an F1 driver. I could be the back end of a pantomime donkey. Hell, I could even be the patient of the surgeon. I mean, just take a look at this part. Not only does it begin with rampaging bulls that you think will chase you, but then leaves you stuck with sentient wooden planks, but even worse, some logs come out and roll towards you, which is murder for your eyes with all this confusing garbled mess of 3D models spinning around. And then, yes, it gets even worse, more logs then start appearing from the top that bounce towards you, meaning that if you jump over some of the rolling logs, there's a high chance that you'll be immediately smacked by a bouncing one coming right up behind you, which is impossible to predict or even see coming. There's absolutely no way to get by this part without trial and error, and even worse, yes, it gets worse! You do still have the 3 hits before losing a life, but in this chase, every time you get hit, you move closer to the wooden planks, which is where all the bouncing and rolling logs are appearing from. Every other chase level has obstacles coming to you from the foreground, so moving back after getting hit isn't an issue. Here though, you get hit and you have 100% no chance to avoid them since your heels are right next to them. Oh, screw off, septic man! Come on, come on, come on, come on, I can do this, I can do this!
Oh, wow. That's just beautiful. No, you hear that? That's not the soundtrack glitching out. That is just what the soundtrack is when you're doing the chasing towards the screen sections. And bearing in mind the amount of times I replayed these sections, these noises I ended up hating within about 2.5 minutes.
Okay, to be fair for a second, the Pepsi Man theme itself that you find on YouTube is downright brilliant. And is used for the first stage of the game, while the other stages use other original bits of ridiculous dance music that add the right sense of energy and panic to the non-stop running gameplay. And they sound different enough from each other where it doesn't grate on my ears, but then they still felt the need to include that
in every damn song. And to be honest, it doesn't even fit most of the time. You're just listening to a catchy beat and then it cuts out in the middle of a bar to scream PEPSIMAN at you, and the frequency of it will grate on your ears. Or they decide to add that horrible concrete jackhammer effect to it. There's just no call for it. It's purely irksome, nothing more.
What do you think, Kat? Do you like it?
The bottom line though is that Pepsiman as a game is just like any other non-stop running game on your phone, but just not as good. Not only with those chase sequences, but even the main game itself can be finicky as all hell. The biggest gripe of mine being how speed adjustment works. You see, whenever you speed up or slow down, which the game does make you do sometimes by the way, the timings of triggers of 3D objects on the same screen you're looking at do not adjust to your speed and assume that you're still running at them at the intended speed. Meaning that not only is the rhythm of the obstacle screwed, but also the order in which things are supposed to appear. You'll be left with game over after game over because everything, and I mean everything, will just smack you down completely out of nowhere since you'll be too busy avoiding another object that did not account for your speed. It happens all the damn time and you can't control it or predict it. Even when I knew what was going to happen depending on my speed, the game somehow tricked me up. And this is at its most noticeable when two things come at you at once. I mean, I appreciate the danger warnings, guys, but that means nothing when you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, totally unable to avoid damage because your game is shite. Also, when you slow down, you can't move left or right at all, so don't rely on it when you want to slow down and steer. Without all the timing problems not being accounted for though, everything in general is way too fast and unpredictable to the point of it being a game of Simon Says. It isn't too bad in the first two stages, but the last two really start to take the piss in terms of unreadable crud happening at you at the very last millisecond. Just when you think you're doing really well, oh wait, you missed that thing right there. That's your fault apparently. Plus, the 3D nature of the game goes a bit overboard too with how levels progress. You'll constantly be twisting and turning in and out of the environment out of your control, which leaves your body placed in unintended paths ready for you to crash. You don't have a clue what you're supposed to do or how far to the left or right to move in these moments. And Pepsi Man, come on, these things are trying to kill you. Do you think it'd be wise to move your ass onto the pathway right next to you? Why would you voluntarily fall down a hole when you can walk over there? Why get hit by a truck when there's so much empty space on each side of you? Pepsi Man, you ruined Pepsi for me! The game really does feel impossible most of the time without total guesswork, luck, and a bit of memory from your constant failures. And the amount of ways Pepsi Man can fail are so numerous he puts Cash Banuka to shame. But at least that does make it the most entertaining part of the game. He'll be flattened, he'll smack his head on construction equipment, he'll smack into door frames, he'll skyrocket into the air, he'll trip over balcony railings and fall to the floor. That's my favourite. And the sound effects that go with them make the deaths much more enjoyable than they have any right to be. I tell you, those houses you run through in stage 1 are the perfect foreshadowing. For how sensitive these controls are and how imprecisely you can position yourself with analog sticks and D-pad alike, it just ends in calamity every single time. And then in other points of the game, the control isn't anywhere near as sensitive enough, since when you really need to move by fast-moving obstacles when stuck inside a bin or something, it takes you 5 years to turn left or right, leaving you dead against everything that's coming for you. And also, the control is inverted in these bin parts, yeah, so you better figure that out before trial and erroring a life away. Come on, Pepsi Man, use those biceps to take the bloody bin off your head. You've been jumping everywhere throughout the whole game. Why can't you jump off of this barrel here? If you get hit once on these barrels, you lose a life straight away. No health, so isn't it just safer to leap off? Rolling around at the speed of hell. And like I said, those first two stages with the 3 acts within them, including the chase act, aren't the worst with this kind of stuff, but the last 2 stages can get outright sadistic when putting all these things together, and then decide to mess you up even more by adding extra fast and extra slow ramps to mess with your timing even more, and force you to speed up and slow down on top of that, making the random last second pop-ups appear at even more wrong times, and hazards that don't only knock you back to waste time and make you lose health, but also push you so far back you'll fall into a hole and lose a life anyway. Yeah, game's full of that too. Even Tumbleweed of all things. Tumbleweed, that's so light that the wind pushes it through the air, does this to you. You are the most pathetic superhero of all time. But the funny thing is that I just can't stop playing despite all this waste going on. Because every completed stage has another FMV scene with our favourite resident big sweaty man, and I want to see them all. Not only because I'm sickly curious to see how much more disgusting they can make him, but also because he says things
Pepsi for TV game.
that aren't even translated properly.
These being used is outright bizarre to me. They're essentially more advertisements for Pepsi, so your reward for beating this game that's already an advertisement for Pepsi is more advertisements for Pepsi. And that wouldn't bother me, but the ads themselves are so unappealing that I don't know how they thought Pepsi looked to the Japanese market they were selling to. This is the American dream, guys! But yeah, combining me wanting to see how pointless and disturbing these FMV scenes got with the total absurdity of Pepsi Man as a concept in the first place is what's keeping me going no matter how angry I get with the game. And the fact that it's only 30 minutes long. Yeah, I'm not joking.
I mentioned that each stage has 3 acts, 2 runners and 1 chase scene, which sounds like a lot, but when you consider all these acts last around 2 minutes when you know how they go, yeah, this game is a short one, so I guess for a first-time player they made up for the length of the game by giving you some of the hardest 4 stages on the PS1. I mean, come on now, look at this even. This is the very ending gameplay section of the last running stage before the final chase. You have to maneuver around the tightest gaps within the whole game while going insanely fast, with twisty-turny 3D angles, with slightly iffy controls, and with the fact that if you get hit 1 time, since it's a vehicle segment, you lose a life. Meaning if you want any chance to beat this stage, you cannot risk losing a single life going through all of this so that you're ready to fail and memorize the pattern for this bit at the end of it. You can't pick up more lives while you play the stages, because that would be fair, so instead, if you lose them all right at the end here, game over, my friend, and back to the beginning of all of this again. See all of these names on the credits? They're assholes! And what's my final reward for all of this? A useless slob with a serious Pepsi problem sitting in a rubbish tip of his own making that runs off camera about to piss his pants. Doesn't this make you want to crack open a cold one with the lads right now?
But hey, aren't we all glad that Pepsi Man came through in the end? Because even though he saved the world from running out of Pepsi 20 years ago, we still feel the effects of his heroic actions even to this day. Like, whenever you go to a restaurant and the waiter asks you what you'd like to drink, you say Coke, and they ask you, is Pepsi okay? Yeah, I won't lie, this was probably the most aggravating and irritating hour of platforming gameplay I've ever experienced on the PS1, but I can't pretend that I didn't enjoy it a little bit. It really was just funny, it's so memorable, it's quite the ride actually. And Pepsi Man, he's just the best mascot of all time. Look at that chain, you know he means business. So in the end, what else can you say other than, now it's Pepsi?
Hey there everybody, thank you so much for watching this video until the very end. Stay tuned for the outtakes because they will be on in just a second, but first I want to ask you, how do you like this wonky camera angle, eh? I hate it, but you can hate it with me now. You can join in with my misery. Yay! Thank you so much to all of the people on the screen right now that have supported this channel and this show via Patreon. Wouldn't be able to do it without you guys. Thank you so much. And before the outtakes, before the outtakes, special thanks to the top tier supporters for this month. Exopaz, Matthew Hubble, The Mirthful Misanthrope, Brandon, Kirsten B, Cyberpunk Symphony, Nicole Ganara, Dave Marshall, Fart Rules, thank you so much for making your name that, Crotchety Old Emu, another great name, Nico Randell, The Game Shed, Daniel Leon, Mitchell Reed, and A.D. Thornton Smith. Thank you so much, every single one of you amazing people.
These being... Hey, Michelin Man, I think my pants are stuck in. No. Oh.
Who's home?
The kids got home.
Oh.
We were doing so well, now the dog's woken up.
Yay.
And,
I'll save you! Oh, I fell over. Sorry.
But yeah, combining me wanting to see how disturbing and pointless these FMP zines got. Feathery pillow.
Did you like it?
I found God.
Pepsi Man as a concept in the first place is what wanted me keep...
But don't start taking private calls with it, alright?
Jim, Mum sent you the baby blanket that you had when you were a kid. Do you have it in the post yet?
Can you say all of that again? I don't understand a
I know.
word.